with that, we'll welcome you to the second floor of the Duncan Student Center. He's JJ Post. He's John Bailey. I'm Jacob Iron. So happy to have you with us for this special edition episode of Shamrock Sports. We're taking it as Sham Take. We're going to see it. These two are going to debate about a bunch of issues. But before we can debate, we got to get you in the know. And the way we can get you in the know is by letting you know and getting you to the highlights of women's basketball from last night. It was a great game against Virginia Tech in Notre Dame women's basketball as the fifth-ranked team came into town. Let's get you to the highlights. We start tied at 6 with 5:30 left in the first. Hannah Hidalgo, the phenomenal freshman, did what she does every night and starred again, and it started early for her as she would tie up Olivia Summill early here, bang, stops it, and turns it over to Anna DeWolf, who stops the streaking Hidalgo, who powers through contact to get the and one. She would make the free throw. All her. 1:13 left in the first. DeWolf gets the rebound and skips the ball to the backdoor cutting KK Bransford. Irish up 17-16, marking the 8th lead change of the first quarter. You got a good one brewing in the Bend. To the second quarter, Irish up 10. Virginia Tech inbounding. Georgia Amor to Kitley. Back to Amor. Launches the three. Hokies trailing by 7. Irish maintaining their lead as we jump to 7:45 in the third. Hidalgo in transition sees her shooting guard, Sonia Citron, who nets home the tray. Irish up 14. VT calling a timeout in response. A little later in the third, Hokies starting to make a run. It's Matilda Eck from downtown. A flat-footed Bransford in coverage can't get their ND on the timeout. Late in the fourth quarter, Irish up 8. Hidalgo saves the turnover, who turns it to offense as she works through traffic and sees a sneaky Citron for 2. Irish upset the Hokies 71-58. Here's how it sounded on WVFI.
And Notre Dame's biggest win at home this season is complete. Virginia Tech's 10-game win streak comes to an end in South Bend as the Irish win it 71-58 over the 5th-ranked team in America.
And there is no better time to have the conversation about what is this team's ceiling in March than right now after a big win. This team has shown glimpses of it. They beat UConn, now they beat VT, but then they've also shown they can't do it sometimes. NC State is a great example. Then you also look at both times against Syracuse. John, I'll start with you. What's the ceiling of this team as we flip the calendar the third month?
First of all, Stephen A. who again? But getting into MD, I gotta say, the NCAA made a grave mistake. They ranked their top 16 teams Thursday morning. Virginia Tech was number 5. Notre Dame, nowhere to be seen. And you better believe that was written in pencil, folks, because Indy proved that game that they are a top 10 team in all of college basketball. I wouldn't quite put them in the first tier of contenders. There's South Carolina, there's everyone else, and then Notre Dame is kind of on the fringes. But I think they're really gelling now. It's a testament to Coach Ivy and senior leader Maddie Westbeld, my favorite player on the team because of what she can do interior on the defense, being able a strong rim protecting presence, and then on offense, stretching the floor. She went 2 of 4 for 3, 19 points, 10 boards. I want to see her hit a couple more threes, but other than that, I really love the way she's contributing to the flow of the offense and being just an anchor on the defensive end.
You have to adjust the ceiling of it after this game because for all season, the big kind of question mark for this team is how can they handle teams that have superior post presence? And in several of these big games, like Jake mentioned, it wasn't really evident that they had a plan that they had the ability to stop teams with a dominant center. Kitley, however, came to town as the back-to-back reigning AC Player of the Year, one of, if not the best center in the country, and Maddie Westbeld pretty much single-handedly, but with help from Kylie Watson as well, held her to 11 points on low efficiency, 9 rebounds below her season average, and that means a lot for a Notre Dame team that it felt like for most of the season, as soon as they played a team with a real center in the NCAA tournament, it was going to be over for their run. That clearly is not the case anymore, but there are still questions that are going to need to be answered. Ultimately, depth for this team is the biggest concern. They only really have 7 bodies in the rotation at any given time. If they get Cass Prosper back, that element changes, but it still remains unknown when Cass Prosper exactly will come back. So right now, Notre Dame, I think, has the pieces on the starting lineup to be a national title contender. Hidalgo's an All-American. Westbeld, Citron, these are great players, but until Notre Dame gets more on the bench that can contribute with the second unit, I just don't think they have the firepower, even if maybe a Final Four run is on the cards, to truly break into that S tier of contenders, especially in a very strong year for women's basketball. South Carolina, Iowa, Caitlin Clark is always going to be up there. Ohio State, who is the best team in the Big Ten, not Iowa, will be up there. It's just such a deep year in women's basketball. South Carolina, who already beat Notre Dame by 30, is on the top of it. I don't know if they have the firepower if they don't get more on the bench.
That's true, but I do think right now they are on such a roll. They're going to beat Louisville. They're going to run through the ACC.
Can they beat Louisville, though? They can't. They didn't beat Louisville previously. That's the question I have.
It's tough, but I don't think that's the same women's team we're seeing right now. I think that
you're right. They had an All-American at point guard.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah, that is the difference.
Miles is in a boot on the bench. Yeah. That's the difference between this year and last year, and Hidalgo's a huge factor.
Oh, yeah.
But who hit the buzzer beater last year, Purcell?
Yeah.
The player that's sitting on the bench injured right now.
No, I understand that, but I think it comes down to the team being more cohesive and starting off hot. A lot of the games they struggled, take Louisville, take NC State, even North Carolina. A lot of that had to do with slow starts in the first quarter. They got themselves into a hole that they really had to rally to dig themselves out of. And oftentimes it was due to mental lapses on defense. The defense was locked in. You saw them, they were matched up perfectly against Virginia Tech. There were never any, easy layups given up. Virginia Tech had a season-low 58 points, and I think being, mentally locked in like that and having such a great coach like Niele Ivey to kind of take the reins and lead you into the tournament is going to allow them to hit their stride deep right when they need to do so.
Yeah, the shooters are also the factor, too, because the one thing we don't mention from that Louisville game, they shot 11% from deep. This is not a team, when you go hand-in-hand with that problem, they don't have a ton of options from beyond the arc. DeWolf can shoot, but she hasn't really been a high-volume shooter, at least not comparatively to what we saw from her at Fordham. You mentioned Westbeld, a good shooter, but you don't see a ton of volume out of her because of the responsibility she has on the interior. Citron can shoot, but sometimes, like we saw yesterday, it's a half-and-half game for which Citron do you get the entire game. And Hidalgo's shooting, but she has so many other responsibilities in the offense. There's maybe, I'd say, 5 players Notre Dame wants at any given time to shoot the three-pointer, and 4 of those players have responsibilities elsewhere on the court that are more important than being the floor spacer. Emma Risch, really the underrated injury loss to this team. That maybe could have been the sniper that Notre Dame can rely on to just be a floor spacer. They can't really afford themselves a floor spacer because so many of their players have other responsibilities. If Notre Dame shoots above 11% against Louisville, they probably win that game, I'd say. But there's so many other things that Notre Dame will always need to be worried about that you can't just worry about the shooting as like the one thing that this team needs to do.
Just play 5 out and you're good.
5 out and we're good. Team that's also starting to look like they can play the rest of the way is Miss Men's basketball team. They took care of business against a really strong Wake team and, dare I say, knocked them out of the tournament. Joe Lenardi thinks so. So I think this is right now, you look at this men's basketball team, they're playing great basketball right now. So this begs the question. This has been the past 2 years, at least I've been here as a junior. Someone transfers out, someone goes to the NBA. Who would you like to franchise tag? If this is a men's basketball team right now, that you can stick a player and say, you're not hitting the portal, you're not going to the NBA, who are you taking that for, JJ?
I think there's only one answer. It's Marcus Burton. And you can make arguments for potential. How about right now? There's only one player in this roster that is leading you past good teams. That's Burton. And Shrewsbury has been a huge help. Braden Shrewsbury, that is not the coach. Yeah. But Burton is the one that is making everything happen to this offense. There are so many levels to his game on the offensive end, and he's still unlocking more of his bag, it seems, every game. The defense, very underrated. He's leading ACC in steals. He is not the biggest player. Everyone knows that. That's on the scouting board. It's probably the first thing on the scouting board. But he plays above his size. He has the storyline that you want to face the team as a hometown hero, a kid from Mishawaka who didn't really get offered by Notre Dame until late in his recruiting process. He took the offer almost as soon as he got it and committed, and now he is the face of the team. There are players who maybe 4 years from now might be better than Burton, but there's only one player that's averaging over 15 points per game in conference play. There's only one player that's dropping 30 points against a tournament team at home, including all the points when it really mattered most, when it felt like Notre Dame was dropping out of the game. Burton is more than just a freshman star. He's clearly an emerging leader. He's a floor general. He's everything you want to have for 4 years in the modern college game in a sport where so often you're seeing one and dones. You're seeing these top players leave. The Burton being able to stay 4 years and command this offense 4 years will be such an underrated element. It reminds me of Kihei Clark and that Virginia team. Maybe a little short size, probably NBA might not be in his future, but he has such an instinct on the floor for how to score, how to command a defense, how to be someone players look to in moments of stress. And that is such a valuable element, especially on a young team, especially a team that when they make the tournament, if they do make the tournament, they're not going to have a lot of collective experience to them. Burton is that type of player that maybe has the potential to just get so many reps over the next 3 years that he can be that leader for this team. And, it's possible we're going to have NBA players in this team. The announcers certainly seem to think so over the weekend. But even if there is none of those NBA players, Burton is going to be the guy that every game from here on out for Notre Dame, you can bet is scoring 15+ and is being a spark plug on the defensive end.
I just got to say, I love playing spoiler to teams like Wake. Marcus Burton's been a big part of that, and what's not to love about the guy? Like JJ said, he's a hometown hero, and I think the ACC Rookie of the Year. He's been phenomenal as a freshman, but really, small scoring guards are a dime a dozen, and really, how much room can he grow? Quite literally, right? As a sub-6-foot guard, there's not a lot that he can do to get better at this point.
Bro, we're taking short kings now? What? Come on now, man.
No, I mean, and short guards can excel in college basketball. We've seen it in years past. Kihei Clark, Cassius Winston, but I ultimately think that the best player on this team in the long run is going to be Tay Davis. He actually reminds me a lot of this Nuggets player, Peyton Watson. The future is in these long, athletic guards who can play as Swiss Army knives and do everything on offense and defense. He's very versatile, and really his athleticism, as raw as it is, allows him to disrupt passing lanes with his length and just throw down the most thunderous dunks on the drive. He's a decent ball handler. He can create off the dribble. His shooting's a little bit, that's some room to grow. But I believe that he's going to reach his potential because, let me take you back, folks, to December 19th, 2023, a day that will live in infamy, the day Notre Dame lost to the Citadel. The players were distraught afterwards. Coach Shrewsbury addresses the team. He says, hey, guys, I know things are tough, and let me tell you, I will help you transfer if you want, but you stick with me, you're going to see improvement. You're going to see that come February, we will be playing the best basketball of the season. Tay Davis, he's the one who shared this story with the press because he bought into Coach Shrewsbury. He came to Notre Dame for Coach Shrewsbury, and he's going to grow under Coach Shrewsbury's development. Already, he's seen a 15.7% jump in his field goal percentage this year. He shoots 69% from the line, and I think he may not ever become an elite three-point shooter, but he's going to be able to step back and become a pivotal point of this team, the most valuable defender. Even if he doesn't score the most, he's going to be able to do so much with his versatility that he'll be the best, especially with our freshman phenom coming in, Sir Muhammad, who, unlike Burton, is actually tall, 6'5", 6'7". That's the future. You need a tall lead guard, and as a facilitator, he's going to be able to get guys like Shrewsbury, who, as much as I love him, is probably going to be relegated to a catch-and-shoot guy for most of his career, and he's going to really unlock Davis, that two-man game, that pick and roll. I really see Muhammad as being the future lead guard of this team.
I think you make two solid points. Unfortunately, I also think both are irrelevant. For one, you talk about what more can Burton do to grow. I'll ask, why does he need to grow? This is a guy, screw the freshman team, he might be an all-ACC player right now. You look at what he's doing statistically, there are not a ton of players in the ACC that are matching what he's putting up as a freshman. Even if Burton, nothing else in his game grows, even if he physically doesn't grow another inch, if he keeps these stats for the next 4 years, you're looking at a player that will be a consistent all-ACC point guard. The value in that cannot be understated. And then you talk about, Tay Davis fits what the modern NBA team wants in a wing, and Sir Muhammad fits what you want in a guard. Micah Shrewsbury, his whole career, has made a career out of being unconventional. Yeah. Jalen Pickett, when he arrived at Penn State, was the booty ball player. He was slow. He's got an unconventional method of handling the ball. He likes to back players down. And Shrewsbury turned him into an All-American.
He did.
The NBA has what they like, and I think that's entirely fair. Tay Davis might be the best NBA profile on his team, but there is no point in Shrewsbury's career as a head coach where he's shown he cares about what the NBA wants. He's going to build a team that wins, and if Pickett won via booty ball, you can bet he can win by Burton playing small ball.
Yeah, that's the way you can do it. And unconventional is Micah Shrewsbury, and both teams on the hardwood had a splash of the weekend. You know who also made a splash? Men's swimming and diving. Our own Alice O'Brien and Cooper Van Driesch break down all that happened down in North Carolina.
I'm Cooper Van Driesch.
And I'm Alice O'Brien, and we're here to talk about the ACC championships for the men's and women's swimming and diving teams that just happened this past week in Greensboro.
Yes, they went to the Greensboro Aquatic Center, one of the fastest pools in college swimming and swimming in general. And the men had an outstanding meet. I'm going to talk about the men, Alice will talk about the women. So first we're going to look at Chris Giuliano. He won the 50, 100, and 200, which is a dominant performance on the freestyle, and that's practically sweeping all the sprint events, with that 200 becoming a sprint with how fast it has become. But you also look past Chris, who was the AC MVP. You look at the backstrokers. Tommy Jant won the 200 back, which was crucial team points for the Irish. So they finished second. That was their highest program finish in the ACC since they joined 10 years ago. Now as we look at the women on that.
Yeah, I mean, the women obviously not quite as dominant as the men. They finished 8th overall, but they did have 6 top 8 performances. I know there were 2 Carmel swimmers, high school Carmel swimmers, Madeline Chrisman and Maggie Graves, who both finished 5th in their respective events. Madeline Chrisman has been really good this whole season in the 200 back. She got 5th in that event. And then Maggie Graves got 5th in the 1650 free. So that's some good momentum leading into NCAAs for sure.
And Alex mentioned NC2As. For the men, they'll take place at the end of March in Indianapolis at the Auditorium, which is the home of swimming.
Yep.
Alice and I both had the honor of swimming that pool during our
That's
swimming
my
careers
pool,
now,
yep.
back in the glory days. But now that we're here, we're looking at the Auditorium as a place where every swimmer hopes to swim at.
For sure.
And college football, we have the Rose Bowl. College baseball, it's Omaha.
Yep.
But this is where swimmers go to excel.
This is like the magnum opus for sure.
Definitely. And Alice, as we look towards NC2As on the men's side, what are we looking for to the men?
I mean, I think we just need to look at building forward after this meet. Like you said, they got 2nd at ACCs. That's the highest program finish in history. And with Chris Giuliano getting most valuable swimmer of the meet, really just feeding off of that positive energy. They won the 400 freestyle relay, the men did, and that was such an upset against NC State. So really just feeding off the energy of ACCs and, you know, relying on the backstrippers as well. And also the divers, we didn't mention that as bonus points because we actually really do have a great diving team, and not a lot of great swim schools have great diving teams as well.
Yeah, to Alice's point, because diving has fewer events on the roster in comparison to swimming, points you can pick up are bonus points,
For
which
sure.
can help in the team battle. So that's crucial for the Irish, trying to get their first top 10 finish in program history. So while it might not be up with the likes of Cal and Arizona State at this meet, this is a building meet to get in that top 10 and move to the top 5, and eventually #1 for the Irish.
Yeah, well, that's all we have on swimming, but this has been Cooper and Alice for Shamrock Sports, and now we'll send it back to the desk.
Thanks so much. As we get you out of the pool, we're getting you up into the atmosphere. We're storming the courts. That is maybe the biggest conversation around college basketball right now is, should you storm the court? We saw it against Wake, where ultimately Filipowski gets injured against Wake Forest, and this has sparked a conversation across the entire landscape. I ask my 2 men at this table, should storming be banned? We'll start with you, Ben.
So, college sports, the thing that makes them special is their almost mythical status. It's filled with rich traditions, pageantry, and the right amount of crazy fans. And a big part of that is the fact that there's a devoted student section to these 18 to 22, 23-year-old college students who, you know, maybe had a little too much to drink, a little too much fun out in the stands, but they are not the same type of fans that you see in the NFL, in the NBA, the stuffy, white-collar, 80-year-old guy sitting on the half-court sidelines. They don't have the same energy or devotion to these programs that the college fans do. And what does that lead to? Storming the court, storming the football field. These are integral parts of college athletics that make them so special, is the fan involvements, the fan interactions, and their passion for their alma maters. I think, unfortunately, NIL, and it's great for the players, but it's really led to these athletic directors and conference commissioners being a little too greedy, giving in to capitalism and commercialization, and stripping a lot of these special elements away. I think they've been listening to a little much Wu-Tang Clan, you know, cash rules everything around me, right? They've been given into the green and dollar bill, and I think as much as it's important to protect the players, it's also important to protect the elements that make college sports magical, like storming the court.
Yeah, in the words of Che Guevara, allegedly, it got the basket, but at what cost to the communal spirit? Now, court storming has nothing to do with Castro's ability or lack thereof to do a Euro step. But I agree with your point, actually. College, I've seen so many people talking last week, well, the NBA doesn't have court storms. Good. I don't want college basketball in the NBA. Nothing about college basketball is like the NBA other than the fact that it's basketball, and that's what makes college basketball great. You have these small field houses with 10,000 kids packed in, screaming their lungs out. And I think, yes, you need to make adjustments. It is untenable that you could have any player potentially hurt by a court storm. That being said, banning's not the answer. Taking away one of the things that has made this sport magical for so many years is not the answer. You know, I think Mike Golick had an interesting concept where he, you know, wanted to give out chicken sandwiches to maybe entice students. What we shouldn't do is put people in prison. We do not need to turn Purcell into a cell. We need to make sure that there is an ability to keep college sports magical without ruining I want to say ruining, because I'm not one of those, like the NBA is an unwatchable product, but the court corporatization of the NBA is what makes it distinctly worse than college basketball. College basketball is for people. It's for the students, it's for the players, and with these NIL era, I think you're seeing more and more administrations kind of see their players as assets, financial investments that they need to protect. And I think that's entirely fair. That is a reasonable trade-off for players becoming, essentially contracted athletes. That being said, you got to figure out a solution that's not just taking away one of the core elements of college sports, and one of the things that makes college sports, for people like me and for people like students like me around the country, one of the best things about a college experience.
Yeah, it didn't work for alcohol. It's not going to work for court storming either. Banning it outright is just completely unfeasible. And if I was out there, you know what I would think? Can't stop all of us, right? They're not going to be able to hold all the fans together. So I think, like you said, need precautions, need adjustments to protect the players. You can't overreact because Kyle Filipowski decided to stick his foot out and get run over by a fan. I think Bill Self, the great Kansas coach, had a really good insight into this, that it's up to the coaches to bear a little bit of responsibility for this. Take a timeout with 15 seconds left, get your players off the court, have them by the sideline, and up to the players then to actually follow through, not sulk out on the hardwood, and get out as soon as possible like we see with college football. You could also even create a 60-second, 30-second shot clock for allowing the players to get off the court before the fans can come down and then storm the court.
Did we just equate court storming to prohibition?
Oh, yes.
I think we
Very
just
serious.
did.
I mean, we were talking about Das Kapital earlier, so I feel like we've gone off the rails
Yeah,
with
we will.
historical implications.
Poli-sci right there. Poli-sci beyond all
2024
belief.
election coming up next.
Oh, gosh. All right, well, as the host, we got to keep it moving, so I'll keep it moving here. We'll stay within the college basketball landscape at this moment. We talk about capitalism. This is a great example of capitalism within college landscape.
No.
Should we
No more
expand
poli-sci.
the 96 teams? I know these two don't love it, but it's a conversation we have to have. Right now, how it stands, both tournaments, 64 teams with a slew of auto bids with your conferences. But it is also the 96 team to get those hot teams. Notre Dame, while understandably are not in a position to make the tournament, with a 96 and they could win a couple more games, is that the team the NCAA tournament wants? And that's why they're looking to add more to 96?
No, I yield my time. John is taking the noble position of doing the counter argument to this. No, I yield my time to John.
Thank you for your generous yield. So I take you back. We talked about what makes college sports special. Now I ask, why do we love March Madness? Why do men take time off work in droves to watch the first round, the second round? It's because we love upsets. As humans, we are conditioned to love underdogs and believe that anything can happen, that the weak can conquer the strong. Yes, eventually, clock will strike midnight on Cinderella. That carriage will turn back into a pumpkin. UMBC and Farley Dickinson will go out. Not going to win the championship. But for 2 weeks, those teams, those programs, they're on top of the world. It's their one shining moment. And that is what makes March Madness truly special. Conference realignment, as we've seen recently, favors these Power 5 conferences. The Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, SEC, and Big East. The Big 10 and SEC in particular going to really benefit from this new realignment. Because as it stands right now, the tournament already favors these Power 5 conferences at the expense of mid-majors. Only 4 out of 36 of at-large bids last year went to mid-major programs. And a lot of that comes down to the number of Q1 wins, Quadrant 1 wins, that these major conferences receive. Last year, West Virginia got in over North Carolina with similar resumes, but that's because of the conference schedule. The Big 12 was a lot stronger than the ACC. So you look at their comparative games, the Mountaineers benefited while the Tar Heels didn't. You can say the same thing. Oregon, going to the Big 10 now. They were on the bubble last year. If they have more Q1 games against Big 10 opponents, they're going to get into the tournament. And the committee, they're not going to kick out Illinois. They're not going to kick out another Big 10 team. They're going after the Nevadas of the world, the other mid-majors that are just barely on the bubble. And if we get rid of these teams, we're going to lose a lot of those Cinderella stories. These programs you've never heard of, the St. Peters of the world. That was one of my favorite sports stories ever.
Jersey City, stand up.
Exactly. I knew you'd be a fan of that. And I think that we are going too much towards, again, to go towards our capitalist metaphor. The rich get richer, and these Big 10 SEC schools continue to assert their dominance, and being in the tournament more consistently will lead to more NIL money, to better prospects, and just further eliminate these smaller programs for ever having a chance. And hopefully, it'll also kill the chance of Fox Sports having their own tourney, which is one of the most egregiously disgusting things I have seen in a long time. That would have the Big 10, the Big 12, and Big East playing their own tournament. That can't happen. I want to protect the NIT, so join me and expand the tournament to 96 teams.
JJ, go. I have no rebuttal.
I do think you make an interesting angle with the talk about realignment. I would argue realignment, and I am not a fan of realignment, to be clear, but if you want to talk about things that give advantage to the smallest of smallest, realignment helps these smaller teams because you lose these regional powerhouses like Loyola Chicago, et cetera, that are getting poached by the bigger conference. It's a food chain. You move up and up. The 64-team bid, until the rules of the 64-team tournament get altered, still give bids to schools like the MAC champion, the A10 champion, the whichever your small conference is your favorite, mine is the MAAC champion. Those conferences still get auto bids. Yes, Max Strong. Still get auto shout, Sam Fetterman. Still do get auto bids in this new system. The only difference is the big teams, the big fish in a small pond, like Gonzaga in the Western Coast. No, not this year. But usually, everyone knows the story. Gonzaga dominates the WCC. Gonzaga goes to the tournament. Gonzaga gets the auto bid. If they go to the Big 12, the WCC still gets an auto bid. It just goes to a Santa Clara, someone different. The realignment is going to change things, and it might change things for the worst. I think the 64-team tournament is not one of those things that needs to be changed to accommodate whatever the heck the new landscape's going to be.
But don't we want to protect the NIT? Can't let Fox kill the NIT.
Okay.
I think we can salvage the NIT
I think
if
we
it
can
means
salvage
preserving
that too.
the big tournament.
All right, I'll step in here for this. We talk about the rich getting richer. Well, the football team got richer by adding Mike Denbrock onto the staff. Our own Kean Bagenstos breaks down that addition to the offensive coordinator position.
If you look back to last week, you will remember that we talked about the tremendous impact that Al Golan has had on solidifying the ND defense into one of the best units in the country. Despite Marcus Freeman's solid defenses during his first 2 years with the Irish, he does not have a lot to show for it. No CFP appearances, no NY6 appearances, and just 2 wins in seemingly minor bowls. Not to mention 2 embarrassing losses to Marshall and Stanford. This is due to ND having massive offensive struggles. In 2022, despite averaging 31.8 points per game and 188.9 rushing yards per game, ND was abysmal through the air with only 207.1 passing yards per game. In 2023, it looked like ND's offense was resurrected after the acquisition of Wake Forest QB Sam Hartman, at least for the first 4 games. In the first 4 games, Hartman and the passing offense averaged 265.25 yards per game in passing and 13 passing touchdowns. Then ND started playing some real teams and everything fell apart. During the last 8 games of last year, Hartman had only 11 touchdowns. He also threw an average of 1 interception per game and had 4 games under 200 yards and never eclipsed 300 yards for the rest of the season. Overall, while ND triumphed on the ground due to having strong offensive lines, subpar quarterback play caused major struggles in the passing game and turnover battle. Now in 2022, it was easy to excuse Tommy Rees since Buckner and Pine were not elite quarterbacks. But when you bring in Sam Hartman, who broke the all-time ACC record for passing yards and touchdowns, and watch him flop in South Bend, it is clear that you have a coordinator problem. Marcus Freeman and Jack Swarbrick knew this too, which is why they need to get the best of the best for an offensive coordinator to finally get back into the college football playoff picture and succeed this time. This is why Marcus Freeman got back at Brian Kelly for abandoning the Irish and took Mike Denbrock from LSU. Denbrock has actually had 2 separate stints in South Bend. He served as a tight ends coach from 2002 to 2004 during his first stint. During his second stint from 2010 to 2016, Denbrock was a tight end coach from 2010 to 2011, wide receiver coach from 2012 to 2013, OC in 2014, and OC and the assistant head coach from 2015 to 2016. Then Denbrock went to Cincinnati from 2017 to 2021 to serve as their offensive coordinator and guide Desmond Ridder. From 2022 to 2023, Denbrock went to LSU to guide Jane Daniels' Heisman campaign. At Cincinnati, Desmond Ridder threw for 10,239 yards and 87 touchdowns with 2,190 rushing yards and 28 touchdowns with only 28 interceptions thrown during his time in Cincinnati. That's at 3,100 yards all-purpose and 30 all-purpose touchdowns per year with only 7 interceptions thrown per year. And this production was from a 3-star prospect out of high school. This production led Ridder to be 2-time AAC Offensive Player of the Year and to be drafted in the 3rd round by the Atlanta Falcons, where he currently is the starter. Cincinnati came off 2 4-8 seasons before Denbrock was able to take control. Under Denbrock, Cincinnati was able to get to 2 New Year's Six Bowls, Peach Bowl against Georgia in 2020, and CFP in 2021, CFP being the first Group of 5 team ever to make the CFP, and it was actually able to knock off Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish in South Bend. At LSU, Denbrock took Jane Daniels, an AAC transfer who had 32 combined passing touchdowns in 3 years and 10 interceptions in his 3rd year, and allowed him to throw for a whopping 3,812 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions, while having 1,134 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. Also in 2022, Daniels had 3,885 all-purpose yards, 28 total touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. And also, Daniels will likely be a top 15 pick in this year's draft. Before Denbrock came in, LSU came off 2 abysmal seasons with records of 5-5 and 6-7 in 2020 and 2021. During Denbrock's tenure, LSU was able to beat number 7 Ole Miss with 25 and number 6 Alabama in back-to-back weeks in 2022. In 2023, they were able to beat Missouri, who would have a top 10 finish that year, and beat OSU in the Cotton Bowl by a score of 49-39. LSU is able to take down the top 10 Missouri. Overall, Denbrock can take base-and-dwelling teams or middle-of-the-pack at best teams and turn them into national powerhouses, as he has done with both Cincinnati and LSU. This is because offenses that play under Denbrock can cruise in the air like a fighter jet, critical in today's modern game. Denbrock has an uncanny ability to take basement-dwelling QBs or QBs who no one really talks about and turn them into the #1 trending hot topic and the player to beat across the nation. Coming into South Bend, Denbrock, for the first time in his career, won't have to start from scratch. He will have an elite dual-threat quarterback in Riley Leonard, the type of QB Denbrock thrives with. In 2022, Leonard threw for 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions, while getting 13 more TDs and 700 yards on the ground. Riley Leonard has already proven himself to the nation, as last year people had him projected as a first-round pick before he got injured. With Denbrock's ability to bring players at rock bottom to the very top, there's a very high probability that Denbrock is able to bring Riley Leonard to his first Heisman Trophy and Notre Dame to their 8th Heisman winner. Denbrock's big game ability and ability to make big games and win big games will be critical in helping Notre Dame get back to the college football playoffs. Overall, the clock is ticking for Marcus Freeman to get ND to the promised playoff land. With the format expanding and ND getting both an elite quarterback and elite offensive coordinator known for elevating teams and players from the bottom all the way up, it is clear that all of Al Golden's work over the last couple of years will finally come to fruition.
Thank you so much, Kian, as you give us a fully detailed, in-depth report on Mike Denbrock. There's a lot to talk about there, but there's also a lot to talk about heading into this football season. Many people are questioning, is this the year? Everyone said it last year, and then is this the year with those key pickups? But is this a year for a specific player? We'll start with you, John.
If Notre Dame wants to make the college football playoff, it's going to come down to the play of Riley Leonard, which in turn is going to come down to the play of the offensive line. Last year, we saw Sam Hartman come in, highly touted transfer, and we thought he was going to lead us to an undefeated season, at the very least, maybe 1 loss, right? He's immortal, he can bleed sometimes, but really, he struggled a lot under pressure. I know Leonard is more athletic. I trust him more to scramble and improvise under duress, but I really think the success is going to come down to protecting his blind side. And led by Mr. Charles Jagusaw, one of my favorite prospects in a long time here at Notre Dame. Ever since 2012, when Notre Dame got routed against Alabama in the BCS championship, we've committed ourselves to building from the trenches. Marcus Freeman has bought into this philosophy. He said multiple times that it comes down to the offensive line for this offense to succeed. It's going to help running back by committee. We don't know yet if Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, who's going to break out there. Well, the offense is still figuring things out. They got a big game first week at A&M. get the running back situation figured out, let Leonard acclimate, especially under Denbrock's new system. As you guys have said, probably a lot of RPO. That's going to take some time for him to adjust. Charles Jagusa, 6'7", 325. He is the prototypical modern tackle. Usually when you get that big, there's some diminishing returns, but he's got a background in basketball and soccer, so you better believe he knows how to move his feet. Oh, yeah. He has quick feet. He's got great bend at his knees. Usually those taller guys, they like to bend at the hips. That makes it a little bit more difficult for them to generate power on their thrust then. He avoids that. He's got quick feet on pulling, and he also is able to use his hands. He sat behind Joe Alt, who's another generational lineman out of South Bend, and in an interview, Jagusa really talked about Alt's influence on him using his hands, as our nice host Jake Irons is demonstrating here. It's going to prevent defenders from driving into his chest, keeping them out front there. And I think you combine that footwork with his natural size and strength, get him another offseason in the weight room, he's going to completely dominate and lead this offensive line, which is lacking a bit of experience, so that Riley Leonard and this Irish offense can succeed.
You mentioned the 2012 loss to Alabama, which, as most amateur Notre Dame football historians know, had a pretty significant effect on how Notre Dame built its roster, what they want in a team. One of the other takeaways from that game, Notre Dame needed to get quicker on defense. Notre Dame, in the modern era at least, the Georgia of the world, the Alabamas of the world, have athletes all over the defense. Arguably the most athletic player in the Notre Dame defense, Jalen Sneed. Sneed is the type of player that can, I think the biggest thing for Sneed is Notre Dame needs 2 new starters at linebacker. Jack Kaiser will come back. He's a name and pen. After that, it's kind of up to grabs who will take that position and make it theirs. Sneed's an option there. Also, Notre Dame's pass rush last year, it was good. It wasn't exceptional. They could use a breakout star on that edge. It wouldn't necessarily change the outlook of this defense. It wouldn't fundamentally change how teams prepare for Notre Dame, but it would make them a whole lot better. And Sneed has the quickness on the edge to get around these trenches and get around these stalwart left tackles and sack the quarterback. Sneed, I think, is the type of player who would make an already great Notre Dame defense one of the best in the country. And if Notre Dame's offense, I think we can assume, even if it gets a lot better under Denbrock in year 1, it's probably not going to be the type that challenges immediately for a national championship. The defense, however, if the right players take the next step, could be one that's on national championship level. And we saw in Michigan, this year, you can have a S-tier defense and an A-tier offense. That could still be enough. Michigan built their team off defense and having all sorts of pieces and bodies in defense. Notre Dame is close to where Michigan is. They're still a few pieces away. Jalen Sneed could be a very big piece on that puzzle.
And you look at these two things, I want to respond with one thing. And this is something me and you have always said. Offense wins games. Defense wins what?
Championships.
There you go. I like defense. I am all defense here.
Unless, of course, you're Alabama and you have DeMonte Smith, Jalen Waddle, and a whole horse.
Well, yeah,
then you can kind of break the system.
That's a different
Notre Dame
story.
will not be doing that in year 1.
No way will they do that. But however, A&M at this current moment favored by 1.5 heading into that opening game with Riley Leonard, Mike Elko go head-to-head as he took the job from Duke to Texas A&M. However, we have some more championship-level sports on this campus. One of them, maybe the most dominating in intercollegiate athletics, it's fencing. Our own Sheridan breaks it down. On guard.
Hey Irish Nation, I'm Sheridan and I'm here to recap all the highlights from the ACC Fencing Championships that was hosted right here at the Castellan Family Fencing Center this past weekend. Let's dive right in. The Fighting Irish showcased their strength in the individual competition, clinching gold in all 6 events and securing a total of 12 out of 8 medals. Luke Linder defended his title in men's saber, joined by Noah Silvers and Dominic Joseph, who claimed victory in men's épée and foil, respectively. On the women's side, Atara Greenbaum, Sedna Gandhi, and Josephina Conway showcased their skills, earning gold in saber, épée, and foil. Conway's exceptional performance didn't go unnoticed. Not only did she secure the individual foil championship, but she also clinched victory for the Irish in a nail-biting fence-off against Duke, earning her prestigious title of Women's Most Valuable Fencer at the ACC Championships. Sunday brought tougher challenges as the Notre Dame team faced formidable opponents from Duke, North Carolina, and Boston College. Despite the hurdles, the Irish showcased resilience, with the men finishing second and the women securing their 3rd consecutive title after a dramatic fence-off with Duke, led by Conway's decisive victory in the final foil bout. Now, while the Notre Dame's men's team put up a big effort at the ACC Fencing Championships, their 2nd place finish was indeed a surprising upset. Coming off the last year's NCAA National Championship win, which marked their 3rd consecutive title, a remarkable three-peat, the Fighting Irish has set the bar high. Their achievement made them the first team on campus to accomplish this feat, a testament to their skill and dedication. However, all hope is not lost for the Fighting Irish. As they head into the NCAA Fencing National Championships, they have a chance to redeem themselves and potentially make it a four-peat. With their history of success and determination, the Notre Dame team will undoubtedly be a force to be reckoned with. As they set their sights on victory, they'll strive to qualify as many fencers as possible and defend their co-ed national titles. Best of luck to the Fighting Irish as they aim to bring home more trophies.
While fencing will hit the road to defend their national championship, somebody that's been hitting the road for the past 10 years is football, as they annually play in a Shamrock Series game. And every year when they make the announcement, this year it will be played in Yankee Stadium in the 100th year anniversary of the Four Horsemen playing Army in the Polo Grounds. Well, sub-Polo Grounds, backspace, Yankee Stadium should be a lot of fun for that one. I know as a Metro guy in the tri-state area, it should be a lot of fun for that. But it always brings the question, should it even exist? Should they take away that home field advantage here inside South Bend and Notre Dame Stadium? So we'll start with you, JJ. Should it exist?
We're all upperclassmen now. We know the gist. You don't love it as a student. You'll really love it once you're an alumni. I think it should exist. It's a great, unique recruiting pitch that Notre Dame can go around the country, play in NFL stadiums, and showcase their talent to basically anybody at any time. That being said, I think they also need to plan for the future, because at some point you're going to run out of stadiums. Yeah. We've already gone to Yankee Stadium twice. We've hit the West Coast. We've hit Texas. We've hit Chicago. You're not going to host a Shamrock Series game in, I apologize, to Eagle, Idaho, for example. You know, there are there's a finite number of cities that you can host these Shamrock Series games in when you consider, you know, the goal is to go to cities where there's a large alumni population. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a wall eventually where you're like, okay, do we really want to host a game in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania? Obviously, it's not going to get that point, but the point stands that there's a certain amount of cities where Notre Dame really wants to have these games in, and Notre Dame will run out of that S-tier list cities. So what do you do then? I would propose perhaps a switch. I would make the Shamrock Series game maybe 3 locations that you alternate between from. You know, if you love New York, do New York. Fenway maybe, I know they did a great game there, and I would have Chicago be your premier location. Play a Big Ten team there every year. I'm not sure what the contracts will be like. I'm sure Bavacqua will be far, far, far above anything I could propose on that front, but I think you do need to have a plan for once you run out of the dream locations for the Shamrock Series, and that will happen probably in the next decade. What is your adaptation to keep this uniquely Notre Dame feature and a really strong recruiting feature to keep it on the schedule? What is your plan to make sure that you're not just doing the same things over and over again? My idea would be to have, like I said, these A-tier locations, you know, your New Yorks, your Bostons, your Chicagos, where you know there's going to be a great turnout, you know there's going to be a great environment, and you know they're marketable destinations. You know, maybe just shorten down the list and say, these are our Shamrock locations. We're going to cycle through those every year.
Yeah. No, I think that's really a great idea. I've thought about that too. You know, you're going down the list, you're like, oh, you know, do we really want to make the trip out to Detroit? Do we want to go?
I think a Shamrock to Detroit could be fun.
I agree too.
It's drivable. It's drivable
exactly
for students.
Mm-hmm. So I agree. I think that you can still expand a bit more. There's so many nice places, especially I would turn it into, you know, big on recruiting, right? Go to, you know, they're playing Georgia Tech in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Dome this year. It's not Shamrock Series, but it's still a big game at a big stadium in a premier football state. Bring out all the Georgia recruits, all the Southern recruits out to the Mercedes-Benz Dome and give them a nice show. I think you do the same thing in the Midwest. You can do something like Cincinnati. There's a big Ohio, big Catholic presence there in Cincinnati. You can bring in those recruits for a big game. I think that's the key, is to kind of turn into recruiting. And also, you gotta harken back, like Jake mentioned, the New Rockne days, taking the team on tour, the Four Horsemen. It's something unique to Notre Dame, being such a national brand. Continuing the Shamrock Series allows them to stay at the forefront of the college football experience. You know, they're allowed to host these games in these large markets, find new fans, retain old ones, build this relevance. And I think it's a great opportunity for students to travel. The band gets to go to all the games. It's really unique compared to other schools. And the NIL opportunities is something we haven't really touched on much. I think that, you know, you're going to New York, you're going to Boston. That'll let guys like Audric Estime last year, Sam Hartman, this year Riley Leonard and Jadarian Price. I'm sure they're going to be doing plenty of meet and greets under the NIL banner to make some extra cash and really help them out in that department. And going out to the West Coast, I think there's really going to be an opportunity there for Notre Dame to stand out by having these premier games that athletes are going to want to travel to.
Yeah, and I think you need to, like you said, lean into recruiting because, one of the, interesting things about realignment is the national brand isn't really a unique feature anymore. Penn State will be playing games in Southern California. Ohio State will be playing games in Washington. These are new national brands. Notre Dame always had the unique distinction of being this only team that would be playing games in Indiana, California, Texas, wherever Notre Dame would be there. That's not going to be a unique feature of Notre Dame more. But like you said, because of Notre Dame's historical relevance, tying these games in to things like the Four Horsemen, things that maybe, if you're an 18-year-old in Georgia, you don't really care about the Four Horsemen. But for your fan base, and a very national fan base at that, it keeps, the relevance of Notre Dame, nice word choice on that one, in mind, and reminds people of why your brand is the way it is, what unique elements you do bring to the college football landscape. One of those things is history, tradition, playing a game that replicates the Four Horsemen game. That is one of those things that, really drives in the point that this is one of the sport's premier games. Why is that? Because of the iconic gold helmets, because of the iconic tradition. Those are things that Notre Dame, even as other teams play national schedules, will still be unique to Notre Dame.
And please bring back the Four Horsemen merch. It's the coolest image. I need some of that for my own closet.
We got a
Grantland
lot.
Rice, baby.
Yeah, we got a lot on the upcoming schedule. That is in November, but upcoming, we got the ACC Championship for women's basketball, along with hockey in the Big Ten, as they most likely will head to Yost as we still wait to hear final breakdowns. We'll have that right here on Shamrock Sports. But before we sign off, a good friend of the program, Terry McFadden at WNDU Naker, the NBC affiliate here in South Bend, is retiring. He has spent 40 years at the helm of the anchor desk, and you might be wondering why is that relevant here to the second floor? Lori McFadden, his wife, is our long-time advisor, and she has done everything in the sun for us. So we wanted to give a big thank you to Terry, who's donated so much of his time here to the second floor. So thank you so much, Terry. Congrats on retirement from all of us here on the second floor. But that will do it for Shamrock Sports. For JJ Post, John Bailey, I'm Jacob Irons saying so long. We'll talk to you next week.